Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari.
Tira Vanachari.
Yamunatira Vanachari.
Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Kunja Bihari.
Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari.
Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Thank you. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astota Shri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Pravikacharya Astota Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Shamakun Arakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Yamuna Mai Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 20th chapter, text 5. I think I can do it. Okay. Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Satyasyartasya Brahmanaha Amritasya Cha Mityosh Cha Suryam Atmanam Imahiti Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Satyasyartasya Brahmanaha Amritasya Cha Mrityoscha Suryam Atmanam Imahiti Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Satyasyartasya Brahmanaha Amritasya Cha Mritoscha Suryam Atmanam Imahiti Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Satyasyartasya Brahmanaha Amritasya Cha Mritoscha Suryam Atmanam Imahiti Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Suryam Atmanam Imahiti
Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Satyasyartasya Brahmanaha Amritasya Cha Mrityoscha Suryam Atmanam Imahiti
Suryam Atmanam Imahiti
Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat
Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat
Satyasyartasya Brahmanaha
Amritasya Cha Mrityoscha
Suryam Atmanam Imahiti Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat Satyastasya Brahmanaha Anyone from Zoom?
Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat
Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam Yat
Satyasyartasya Brahmana
Satyasartasya Brahmanaha
Amritasya Cha Mrituscha
Amritasya Cha Mrituscha
Suryam Atmanam Imahiti
Suryam Atmanam Imahiti. Synonyms: Pratnasya, of the oldest person; Vishnuho, Lord Vishnu; Rupam, the form; Yat, which; Satyasya, of the absolute truth; Ritasya, of Dharma; Brahmanaha, of the supreme Brahman; Amritasya, of the auspicious result; Cha, and; Mityoho, of death, the inauspicious result; Cha, and; Suryam, the demigod Surya; Atmanam, the super soul or origin of all souls; Imahi, we approach for shelter; Iti, thus. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This is the mantra by which the inhabitants of Platshakdweep worship the Supreme Lord. Let us take shelter of the Sun God, who is a reflection of Lord Vishnu, the all-expanding Supreme Personality of Godhead, the oldest of all persons. Vishnu is the only worshipable Lord. He is the Vedas, He is religion, and He is the origin of all auspicious and inauspicious results. Purport. Lord Vishnu is even the supreme Lord of death, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Mityu Sarva Haraschaham. There are two kinds of activity, auspicious and inauspicious, and both are controlled by Lord Vishnu. Inauspicious activities are said to be behind Lord Vishnu, whereas auspicious results or activities stand before him. The auspicious and the inauspicious exist throughout the entire world, and Lord Vishnu is the controller of them both. In regard to this verse, Srila Madhvacharya says, Surya Sumagni Varisha Vidadrishu Yata Kramam Plakshwa Shadi Vidvip Samstasu Stitam Harim Upasati. There are many lands, fields, mountains, and oceans throughout the creation, and wherever the Supreme Personality of God, and everywhere the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipped by His different names. Srila Viraraghavamacharya explains this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam as follows. The original cause of the cosmic manifestation must be the oldest person and must therefore be beyond material transformations. He is the enjoyer of all auspicious activities and is the cause of conditional life and also liberation. The demigod Surya, who is categorized as a very powerful jiva or living entity, is a representation of one of the parts of his body. We are naturally subordinate to powerful living entities, and therefore we can worship the various demigods as living beings who are powerful representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although the worship of the Sun God is recommended in this mantra, he is worshipped not as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but as his powerful representative. In the Katha Upanishad 131, it is said,
Should I do?
Yeah, you can.
Ritam babantau sukatasya loke guham prabhishtau padame paradhe chayatapau brahma vido vedanti panchagnayo ye chatinachiketa.
Thank you. O Nachiketa, the expansions of Lord Vishnu as a tiny living entity and the super soul are both situated within the cave of the heart of his body, of this body. Having entered that cavity, the living entity, resting on the chief of the life heirs, enjoys the results of activities, and the super soul, acting as witness, enables him to enjoy them. Those who are well versed in knowledge of Brahman and those householders who carefully follow the Vedic regulations say that the difference between the two is like the difference between a shadow and the sun. In the Shvetashvatar Upanishad 6.1.16 it is said,
Savishvakrin vishvadidatma yoni gyakalakaro guni savavidya pradhana chetragya pati gunesha sangsara moksha stiti bandha hetuhu.
The Supreme Lord, the creator of this cosmic manifestation, knows every nook and corner of his creation. Nook and corner of his creation. Although he is the cause of creation, there is no cause for his appearance. He is fully aware of everything. He is the super soul, the master of all transcendental qualities, and he is the master of this cosmic manifestation in regard to bondage to the conditional state of material existence and liberation from that bondage. Similarly, in the Taittiriya Upanishad 2.8, it is said,
Bishasmad vata pavate bishode tisuryaha bishasmad agnischandrascha mrityudhavati panchamaha.
It is out of fear of the Supreme Brahman that the wind is blowing, out of fear of him that the sun regularly rises and sets, and out of fear of him that fire acts. It is only due to fear of him that Death and Indra, the king of heaven, perform their respective duties. As prescribed in this chapter, the inhabitants of the 5 islands beginning with Plakshadvip worship the sun god, the moon god, the fire god, the air god, and Lord Brahma respectively. Although they engage in the worship of these 5 demigods, however, they actually worship Lord Vishnu, the super soul of all living entities, as indicated in this verse by the words Pratnasya Vishnurupam. Vishnu is Brahma, Amrita, Mrityu, the supreme Brahman and the origin of everything auspicious and inauspicious. He is situated in the heart of everyone, including all the demigods. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7:20, Kamastashtar hirtigyana prapadyante nyadevataha. Those whose minds are distorted by material desires surrender unto the demigods. People who are always blind because of lusty desires are recommended to worship the demigods to have their material desires fulfilled. But actually those desires are not fulfilled by the material demigods. Whatever the demigods do is done with the sanction of Lord Vishnu. People who are too lusty worship various demigods instead of worshipping Lord Vishnu, the super soul of all living entities. But ultimately, it is Lord Vishnu they worship because he is the super soul of all demigods. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaisnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinda Vinishvare Vrishabhanu Sita Devi Pranamame Hare Pre Vancha Kalpatribhyascha Kripa Sundubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavinebhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavin. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pankam langaiti girim yar kripatam aham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Hare Krishna. So today I'd like to speak about the positions of the demigods, the Vaishnavas, Krishna, and the position of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada, he says that human life begins when he accepts religion. And that is the beginning of human life, and that is the difference between human life and animal life. When I go on book distribution, a lot of people ask me, is this book religious? And I tell them it's beyond religion. I told them it's transcendental literature. And so a lot of us, before coming to Krishna consciousness, we had different misconceptions, understanding of who we are, what the goal of life is, who God is, and what is the difference between matter and spirit. I was speaking to someone, I won't mention his name, but you guys might know him. He would write down Bible verses, and he would come to the temple, and he would argue with the devotees. He would say, oh, the Bible says this, Bible says that. And so the devotees, they were trying very hard to turn him into a devotee. They gave him prasadam, they gave him books, and this devotee, when he first read the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he thought it was demoniac. Demoniac. So he put it aside, and he kept coming to the temple to argue with the devotees. And eventually, one of the devotees told him, you know, we did everything for you. We gave you prasadam, we gave you books. Why don't you just try it? Why don't you just try this process? So this person, he said, you know, he's right. I don't have anything to lose. So I started chanting and started following the 4 regulative principles. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. And then he said one day, after chanting, I think he said 6 months, he read Easy Journey to Other Planets, and then it made sense. He said it started clicking like links were connecting with each other. And then when he went to the temple, he was very humble. he put his hands together, folded hands, and then he started, apologizing to the devotees. And then he's been a devotee ever since. Do you know who this person is? No. It's Kanai Balai. Yeah, he was telling me his story, how he would argue with the devotees. Every time he would go write verses, and then he would take the bus, and then he would be ready, fired up. So Kanai Balai, all of us, we had different, we didn't know what devotional service was. And so a lot of people, they believe that there is no God. Some people believe that there is God, we're all God. And then there's another belief that we're all God, but we just forgot. And there's a silly conception that by meditation we can become God. But Srila Prabhupada, he says, God is always God from the very beginning. And so we can see this from the Krishna book, that when Krishna was a little baby, he showed the whole cosmic manifestation to his mother, Mother Yashoda. When he was eating dirt, Mother Yashoda asked him, Krishna, please open your mouth. And when he opened his mouth, Mother Yashoda saw everything, past, present, future, all the mountains, planets, everything. No. Yeah. Well, he did. Yeah. He doesn't say. But Balaram, his brother, they would, you can say, snitch on Krishna. So, and Srila Prabhupada, he emphasized that everyone is dependent on God, whether we believe it or not, just like we depend on the sun and the moon for light. And a lot of people, they say they claim God. I actually met someone. I said, if you're God, how are you controlling the sun and the moon? Can you stop it? And he said no. So I told him, you can't be God. And Srila Prabhupada, he was telling the story. There was a rascal that was claiming to be God. But one day this man, he had a toothache. And the man was yelling, oh. So Srila Prabhupada, he said, you're claiming to be God, the controller of everything, but you're now being controlled by a toothache. So a lot of people, they have wrong understanding of the absolute truth. And in the purport, it was mentioning that God must be the oldest person. And so everyone can get this experience or this idea that my father, he had a father, and my father had a grand like that. It goes all the way back, and then they picture God as an old man with a long beard. And Maharaj, my spiritual master, His Holiness Badrinath Swami Maharaj, he told me next time on books, when you meet someone that claims to be God, you tell them this. You tell them, I thought God would be more attractive. He's not an old man that's growing bald, So I had a chance to say this to a person one time on books, and he said, you're right. So, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachit Ananda Vigraha Nadir Ajar Govinda Sarva Karna Karna. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and He's the prime cause of all causes. This idea that we are the same as Krishna, it's actually very offensive. And in the second offense of chanting the holy name, it says to consider the names of the demigods, such as Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the holy name of Lord Vishnu. But you can see this is a very big problem in Hinduism today. They worship so many gods, different demigods, and they think that the result is the same. And on book distribution, you meet a lot of people from India, and they think like this. They say, I know Krishna, I know Vishnu. And so when I tell them what's the difference between Krishna and Lord Brahma, they don't know. They accept them to be the same. So the poor conditioned soul has no chance. No one wakes up and says, I think I'll become a devotee today. Nobody does that. And he doesn't say, I want to perform devotional service. I want to purify my existence so I can go back home, back to Godhead. That doesn't happen. So, and actually when a living entity begins to start asking these questions, who am I? What is the purpose of life? Where did everything come from? Srila Prabhupada would say this is the beginning of spiritual life. atato brahma jigyasa. And Krishna says, out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and out of those who achieve perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So to understand Krishna is not very cheap. So then the question is, how can we understand Krishna? And Krishna says, Bhaktiya mama bijanati. Only by devotional service can I be understood. We can't understand Krishna by how much knowledge we have, by how much wealth we have, by how much power we have, or how beautiful or handsome we are. It's only through devotional service. And in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami, he says that Krishna does not award devotional service to merely anyone. And he emphasizes that pure devotional service makes liberation insignificant. Krishna can easily award a person material happiness or even liberation, but he does not agree very easily to award a person engagement in his devotional service. In the Tantra Shastra, Lord Shiva says to Sati, "My dear Sati, if one is a very fine philosopher, analyzing the different processes of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from material entanglement. By performing of ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, one can be elevated to the platform of pious activities and enjoy the material comforts of life to the fullest extent. But such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many thousands of births." So Krishna, he offers liberation, but he rarely agrees to offer a sole devotional service, because by devotional service the Lord himself becomes purchased by the devotee. So the rareness of devotional service. Devotional service can in fact be attained only by the mercy of a pure devotee. And Srila Rupa Goswami says that Krishna attracts everyone, but devotional service attracts Krishna. Therefore, devotional service is more powerful than Krishna. And the symbol of devotional service in the highest degree is Srimati Radharani. Krishna is called Madan Mohan, which means that he is so attractive that he can defeat the attraction of thousands of cupids. But Srimati Radharani is still more attractive, for she can even attract Krishna. Therefore, she is called Madan Mohan Mohini, the attractor of the attractor of Cupid. God is great, but devotional service is greater than God because he attracts him. People who are not in devotional service can never understand what great value there is in rendering service to the Lord. In the Hari Bhakti Vilas, it states that devotees of Hari are very rare in the age of Kali. The position of the devotee is more elevated than the position of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. So just think about that for a while. And life is about making decisions, making choices. And it is said that the Lord, he engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. And at the same time, the Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. So we have choices to make. We can either do this or perform devotional service, hear this or listen to kirtan, listen to mundane speculation on the internet, or get authorized bona fide information from the revealed scriptures. So the devotees, they don't waste time. And in the Bhagavatam, it says, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So what are we doing? We're discussing Krishna's name, pastime, glories, activities. So we're actually utilizing this human form of life properly. Like what Srila Prabhupada would say, making the best use of a bad bargain. And if we want to forget Krishna, he gives us the intelligence by which we can move further away from him. And if we want to search out for Krishna, he also gives us the intelligence to understand him. Sarvasya chaham hirde sannivishto mata smritir jnanam apoham cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. And Srila Prabhupada, he would say that we should respect the demigods because they're also Vaishnavas. We respect Lord Shiva, we respect Durga Devi, we respect Ganesh, and we also respect the sun god. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that we give respect even to an insignificant ant, so to speak of the demigods, but we don't accept them as the supreme. So Srila Prabhupada, he makes this point that Durga Devi, she's in charge of this material world. She's a very powerful deity. And Durga means fort or prison house. So, as powerful as she is, she's ignorant about spiritual life. So her husband, Lord Shiva, is a Vaishnava. Durga Devi helps with the creation, maintenance, and the dissolution of the universe. So she asked Lord Shiva, which worship is best? And Lord Shiva responds, Aradhananam sarvesham Vishnur Aradhanam param tasmat parataram Devi Tadiyanam Aradhananam. He says, my dear Parvati, of all methods of worship, Vishnu worship is the best, is the topmost. Then Lord Shiva says, Tasmat Parataram. Better than Vishnu worship is to worship his devotees, the Vaishnavas. And in the purport, it says that people who are too lusty, they worship the demigods. I asked my cousin this before, why do people worship Lord Shiva instead of Lord Krishna? And she says, because Lord Shiva, he is easily pleased and he awards material benedictions. Selfishness destroys the ability to think and to understand. So we all know King Indra, he does some silly things sometimes. Like he tries to kill the inhabitants of Vrindavan, Krishna's friends, cows and everything. So one day, King Indra, he made an offense to his spiritual master, Brihaspati. He was enjoying like anything in heaven, you know. And when you're opulent, when you have an opulent lifestyle, you forget about devotional service. So when Brihaspati entered the room that King Indra was in, he didn't stand up, he didn't show him any appreciation, he didn't even acknowledge him. So Brihaspati, he didn't say anything, he just left. And at that time, King Indra, he realized he made a big mistake. And when the demons heard of this, they took over Indra's heavenly kingdom. There was a big war against the demigods, and it says that the demigods were badly injured. So Lord Brahma, he was feeling sorry for King Indra. So Brahma advised them to approach Vishvarup. He was a Brahmin, to accept him as a guru, and he was undergoing severe austerity and penances. So this is the pastime where he gives him the Narayan Kavacha shield or armor. And Vishvarup explained that the mantra is to chant for protection and it defeats his enemies, the demons. And so basically, Vishvarup told King Indra he should chant mantras, 6-syllable mantras, 12-syllable mantras, and he chants this all over his body, and he chants the different names that are incarnations of Krishna. Matsya, Kurma, Varahadev, Vamanadev, Lord Nrsimhadev, Lord Rishabhadev, etc. to protect him from in the land, water, air, and also night and day and all the different directions. So what do the devotees do also? We apply tilak on our body. So it was kind of interesting how this is a type of protection. So protected by Lord Vishnu. And then after conquering the demons, he again enjoyed all the opulence of the three worlds. But King Indra, he did something regrettable again. You know what he did? He killed his spiritual master. Yeah, he beheaded him because Vishvarup, he was also affectionate towards the demons. So Vishvarup was secretly supplying them the remnants of Yagya. And when Indra learned of this, he beheaded Vishvarup, and he later regretted killing him. And so, 3, yeah. I'm not sure. Pigeons, yeah, that's right. And so Indra, he knew that he killed a Brahmana, so he was to suffer a reaction from it. So he said he later distributed these reactions among the land, water, trees, and women in general. And since the land accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions, a portion of the land turned into desert. The trees were also given 1/4 of the sinful reactions, and therefore they drip sap, which is prohibited for drinking. And because women accepted 1/4 of the sinful reactions, they are untouchable during their menstrual period. And since water was also infested with sinful reactions, when bubbles appear in water, it cannot be used for any purpose. So Srila Prabhupada, in regard to marking the body, Srila Prabhupada tells this story. In India, there's a factory, and all of them were mostly Hindus, and they were Vaishnavas. And so, since they were Vaishnavas, they were allowed to wear tilak and other paraphernalia to work. And after some time, the factory went to new management, and the new proprietor was Muslim. So he didn't allow the workers to wear Vaishnav tilak, and most of the workers, they obeyed. And on the given day announced, they appeared to work without tilak, without anything. And then so one employee, however, thought that he would take his chances and depend on Krishna. So he went to work wearing Vaishnav tilak. It was clear white. And so when the Muslim proprietor saw this, he said, "This one Vaishnav devotee who has worn tilak is very courageous. He may be permitted to wear tilak while working, but the rest are forbidden to wear it anymore." Yeah. So we should take risks for Krishna sometimes. And to conclude, I want to describe what Yamaraj said to his Yamadutas after the incident of Ajamil. When the Yamadutas went back to Yamaraj, they asked who were these 4 beautiful and effulgent personalities. They didn't understand who they were because they couldn't chastise them. So Yamaraj, he says, "My dear servants, you have accepted me as the supreme, but factually I am not. Above me and above all the other demigods, including Indra and Chandra, is the one supreme master and controller. The partial manifestations of his personality are Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are in charge of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this universe. He is like the 2 threads that form the length and breadth of a woven cloth. The entire world is controlled by him, just as a bull is controlled by a rope in its nose." And then, this is my favorite verses of this. "My dear servants, please do not approach such devotees, for they are fully surrendered to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are equal to everyone, and their narrations are sung by the demigods and the inhabitants of Siddhaloka. Please do not even go near them. They are always protected by the club of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore Lord Brahma and I are even the time factor are not competent to chastise them." So the next question is, who is Yamaraj looking for? What type of persons does he want? So he explains, "My dear servants, please bring me to only those sinful persons who do not use their tongues to chant the holy name and qualities of Krishna, whose hearts do not remember the lotus feet of Krishna even once, and whose heads do not bow down even once before Lord Krishna. Send me those who do not perform their duties toward Vishnu, which are the only duties in human life. Please bring me all such fools and rascals." So after hearing from the mouth of their master about the extraordinary glories of the Lord and his fame, name, and attributes, the Yamadutas were struck with wonder. Since then, as soon as they see a devotee, they fear him and dare not look at him again. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, text 27 in the 11th chapter. It says that the Lord is death for the demons, but for devotee he is Amrita, eternal life. And Srila Prabhupada, he says that the duty of a devotee is to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So I'll say some Sankirtan stories. When I was following Vijay, when I had the opportunity to kind of shadow him, he does this thing where he has a flyer and he just kind of waves people to come to his table. He doesn't even say anything. So I was struck with wonder how he does this. So on book distribution, I was trying this. And people, they were just ignoring me, you know. So I was laughing to myself. I was thinking, how can Vijay do this? But then I understand how Vijay is very empowered. And one time in Balboa Park, I was waving at some Mataji, you know, check this out. And the lady, she said, how can I say no to that, you know? So I started laughing again. And so when we go out on book distribution, we're giving people the chance to chant Hare Krishna. We're giving them a chance to associate with the devotees. I was at La Jolla Cove yesterday, and I was telling this family that these books, they help with stress and anxiety. And he said, we're all experiencing one of these. So I gave him a set, and I told him, you should give these to all your friends and family. They'll help you. So I appreciated it. And he was thanking me for being out there, trying to distribute these nice books. And then Chanaka Pandit, he says, he asked, who is happy? And then he says, the man who does not go out of home and who is not a debtor, he is happy. But practically everywhere in the world, you see that everyone is out of home and everyone is in debt. Credit cards, you know, due to college and tuition, they want to buy a new car, this and that. So we should understand the value of Krishna consciousness, devotional service, and what it means to be a Vaishnava. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Is there any comments or questions, corrections?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, there is one question pending on the Zoom.
Okay.
I wonder who that is. Just a little comment. So the story of Vishwarup. So he was son of Twashta.
Mm-hmm.
I think you maybe mentioned it. So Twashta had offered Vishwarup when the demigods were in trouble so that he could be their spiritual master. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, when his son was killed by Indra, he was pretty upset. Mm-hmm. So he performed a sacrifice. And the sacrifice was meant to invoke a demon who would kill Indra. But he was so upset that he mispronounced one verse. And so instead of getting a demon who would kill Indra, he got a devotee in the guise of a demon who Indra killed and sent back to Godhead. Mm-hmm. So this is illustrating the importance of chanting correctly. And one of the main things we all chant is the Hare Krishna mantra. Now, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If you get sloppy about it, there's Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. The word Rama means the god of love, Kamadev. So you're invoking Kamadev instead of Balaram or Krishna. So that's an important point. On the other hand, there's a verse whose last line is Bhava Grahi Janardana. Unfortunately, I looked it up here, but it only has the last line, and I always forget the first part. But it's all about pronunciation, pronouncing mantras. And this verse says that the fool, he says Vishnu, Vishnaya. And the learned man, he dresses as Vishnave, because it's an exception. It's like in the Moham Krishna Padaya Krishna. So when you're invoking someone, you're praying to them, this Aya ending. But for Vishnu, it's an exception because of the. So even though the fool pronounces it wrong, Janardhan, Krishna, he understands the bhava, the feeling. Mm-hmm. So both of them get the same result. So in that respect, you don't need to worry about it, but still we should pronounce everything correctly, because Prabhupada wanted us to.
Thank you. Tyler?
Thank you, Govardhan. Very well researched, very nice class. I have two questions. I mean, we're in such an intense chapter that's describing so many different things, so there's so many different planets we're talking about and narrators here. So the first thing is based on something you said in your research, and the second part's from the purport. Okay, so early on you said something to the amount of, you listed a couple of the powerful demigods, but then you said one who's practicing pure devotional service is actually more dear to Krishna than them. Mm-hmm. So that begs the question, are like the most powerful demigods in our universe not practicing pure devotional service?
That was answered in the previous verses. They're enjoying too much in the higher planetary systems, so they kind of forget about devotional service. Not only that, but they're actually wishing to take birth in Bhartavarsha, India. Yeah.
Wow. So the creator of our universe he's got a material desire that my devotional service can surpass him. Like, he's created this universe, Brahma, but if I can achieve pure devotional service within the universe he's created, I'm going back to Godhead and he's not?
I think this Lord Brahma is a pure devotee, right? Yeah.
So you didn't list Lord Brahma. Who were the demigods you listed in that example? You had two demigods you listed. Was it Brahma? I thought it was Brahma and Shiva.
Yeah, but not all Lord Brahmas are pure devotees.
But the pure devotees... I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also in the purport here, they're quoting the Katha Upanishad, and they're saying that the expansions of Lord Vishnu as the tiny living entity and the super soul are both situated within the cave of the heart of this body. So I know super soul's Chiradakashai Vishnu, it's an expansion of it, but this is, me as a jiva, I am an expansion of Vishnu. It's saying that the expansions of Lord Vishnu as the tiny living entity. Because I know I'm same quality as Krishna, Satchidananda. I know I'm part and parcel. But this is really saying that the jiva is an expansion of Lord Vishnu. Is that true? Yeah. So then how am I an expansion if I'm eternal? If I've always existed and the Lord's always existed, how am I an expansion of Vishnu?
It's not that you were once not expanded and now you're expanded.
Okay.
The English language is inadequate to describe the whole thing. It's just like this idea of emanating, but we've always been emanated. In other words, we're dependent on Krishna, we're part of his energy. This is the distinction. Different kinds of expansion. We're energy expansion, whereas all the Vishnus are plenary expansions. They're energetic. You understand the difference?
Is there an example or something? Can you?
Well, the example, I mean, there's different kinds of expansions of Krishna. The jivas are spiritual expansions, that's why we're not different from Krishna in quality. But there's also the material energy, which is Arjuva's expansion.
Yeah, which is really temporary.
Yeah, okay. But in one sense, there's nothing but Krishna. And that's even a verse. Idam mi vishwam bhagavan nivetara. Idam mi vishwam bhagavan means this universe is Bhagavan. Eva etara, but it seems to be different. It looks to be different because we can't, with our material vision, we can't see that everything is Krishna's energy and it's related to him, and therefore it's not different. So we're also energy, but not this lower energy. We're the para prakriti. We're spiritual expansions. But the Vishnus, the super soul, is plenary expansion. He also has all, he's equal to Krishna, but he doesn't manifest all of Krishna's qualities. You understand?
Yeah.
There's a categorical difference there between Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva, and Shakti Tattva. We're part of the Shakti Tattva, marginal energy. So that's,
So it's all coming from Krishna, but as far as this universe goes, you could say it's all coming from Vishnu. Because I know Vishnu is coming from Krishna.
Because Vishnu is coming from Krishna, so ultimately it's Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. But yes, the way he does it is that he expands as the Purusha avatar, as the Mahavishnu, Chiradakshaya Vishnu, the whole expansion. But ultimately, they're non-different from Krishna. So it's coming from the Vishnus in that sense, but it's ultimately coming from Krishna.
But I'm not an expansion of Krishna. I'm an expansion of Vishnu. So when I meet Krishna, we're a little different. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if I'm expansion of Krishna, Krishna's seen himself in the mirror. But if I'm an expansion of Vishnu, there's a little bit of separation that allows me to be me.
I think you're overthinking it.
Okay. I just learned I'm an expansion of Vishnu, like the Jiva is, so I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around that. Yeah. I am Vishnu in a weird way, right? I'm basically not. I am not Vishnu, but I am of Vishnu. Like, yeah. I mean, it's pretty mind-boggling.
These are my energies. You're part of my energy.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you use the microphone?
Yeah. It's the Vishnu part that kind of enlightened me today. I always thought on Satchidananda I'm a Jiva, but that's expanding from Vishnu. Oh wow.
The Jiva is an energy of Vishnu. So there's.
The use of the word expansion is kind of confusing.
Yeah.
We usually reserve expansion meaning it's a version of Vishnu. Like it is Vishnu in a different form.
So Jiva's energy.
So
I am
yeah.
energy.
So you wanted an example. A good example is if you have like the relationship between fire and heat. Heat. As soon as you have fire, you have heat. But heat is not fire. So if you feel heat, just heat on its own, you can't say, okay, this is fire. But as soon as you have fire, you have the energy of fire, which is heat, the expansion of fire, expansion, It's not actually fire, but it has no separate existence from fire. So in the same way, as soon as you have Krishna, you have his energies, which includes the living entities. The living entities aren't Krishna, but they have no existence separate from Krishna. So in that sense, we are a part of Krishna, but in another sense, we're not. That's the idea of Achintya Beta, Beta Tattva. We're simultaneously different and non-different.
And it's inconceivable. That's why you haven't.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mogul. Dimitri?
It's a different topic. Maybe you can. Mine's also a different topic about the verse, but not about that.
So you mentioned the conversation of Shiva and Durga Devi, and you said that the highest the worship is when we come to worship Vishnu, but even highest than this is when you should worship the devotee of Krishna. But how come if there's understanding of that, Durga Devi is not helping devotees and is not trying to help them in devotional service to Krishna,
So I hear this from Dravida Prabhu. He says that Durga Devi, she has a thankless task. That's her duty, is to bewilder the living entities in this material world. So, yeah. But since she's under the control of Krishna, was it Mamya Prapadyante? Whoever surrenders, anyone that surrenders to Krishna, she lets go of her grasp or her stringent hands on the living entity. So like that.
Don't forget that she's an expansion. She's an expansion of Srimati Radharani.
Mm-hmm.
They're all, this is the same energy, but expansion, Mahamaya, and Yogamaya. So when we become devotees, then the material energy helps us, just like we need all of the facilities here. This whole temple is made out of, quote, material energy, but it's become spiritualized because it's being used in Krishna service. So that very Maya energy, if you really want to surrender to Krishna, will make arrangements so that you can do it. She releases the bewildering in it, and then she, gives you an arrangement that helps you come to Krishna. So it's not all bad. She's not bad at all. She's doing her duty. She's a very conscientious prison warden.
Mm-hmm. Did that help, Dimitri? Okay. Mukunda Charnu.
It's okay. I think people might get too late. So. I don't know how people feel. No. Drew face looks different from your face. I said I'm not sure how people feel about asking more questions right now, and then I said your face looks different from Drew's face.
So I was excited a bit more.
Well, anyway, so in Bhagavad Gita, there's a pretty strong message against worshipping the devas. Not, it's not a harsh message, but he's saying that really, if you know what's going on, if you really know reality, then you'll just worship Krishna, and you'll please the demigods, you'll please the devas by worshiping Krishna, because they like to see Krishna being worshipped because he's their worshipable Lord. And so you can worship the devas, and hey, it's better than just worshiping yourself or worshiping some, other, small jiva or smaller, conditioned soul. But if you, and that may uplift you by, worshiping the devas, but you really don't want to do that if you know what's going on. And when you make progress, and you no longer will, you just worship Krishna. So it's just a matter of lacking intelligence. Mm-hmm. Now, in this verse, of course, the verse is saying, we worship the sun god. And then the purport Prabhupada says that on Plakshadvip, they're worshiping the sun god, the air god, fire god. What were the other two? Brahma and...
fire.
Yeah, sun god, moon god, fire, air, and Brahma. And but then he says that's cool. It seems that Prabhupada's saying, well, that's totally appropriate though, because in the mantra they're saying that Pratnasya Vishnu Rupam, that the form of Vishnu is the first one, the oldest one, the original form, and that's the real Lord here. So it seems that somebody, because I've thought of that sometimes I felt like when we talk about not worshiping the devas, it seems a little fanatical, because it seems that, okay, well, I'm supposed to worship my guru, and I'm supposed to worship my guru's guru, I'm supposed to worship my guru's guru, and all these advanced devotees, and technically speaking, Brahma is one of my guru's guru, the top of our parampara. Mm-hmm. So it seems like I'm not supposed to worship the demigods. I know what I'm doing. I should worship Krishna, and then all the devas are pleased, but then it stops somewhere because I worship all of my seniors up, but then like the devas, it's like, well, just skip over them and worship Krishna. And so then it may lead someone to speculate, okay, well, that message is there because you don't want people to get sidetracked, and therefore say, don't waste your time worshiping the devas, just worship Krishna and they'll be pleased, even though it's not really contrary to our culture or our philosophy to worship Shiva, because Shiva's the perfect Vaishnava, the topmost Vaishnava. But then you don't say that. So it seems like, it may lead one towards some speculation. Then here, again, in this purport, Prabhupada goes from saying, of course, Krishna is the only worshipable Lord, at the very beginning of the purport. And then he goes on, he says, they're worshiping the fire god, the air god, the moon god, the sun god, Brahma. But that's cool because they understand that Krishna is really before them. And then it's like, okay, we'll see. So it is okay to worship the demigods if you do it with the right consciousness. But then from there he goes again and saying, those who are unintelligent worship the demigods, but that's okay because they do that because they're materialistic, and that will bring them out of their materialism. So it seems like, okay, but it seems a little like it's going back and forth. What exactly, how am I supposed to understand this conception of because sometimes there's that idea of ask for milk, get water. So you say an absolute statement just to kind of like it's like a retrograde rocket to kind of kick somebody back into the right understanding. But maybe what that retrograde rocket isn't actually perfect. It's just kind of to push you over a little bit because you're going off course, if that makes sense. So sometimes I wonder which of these is like the real, most accurate way of saying it, and which of these is kind of a concession to kind of keep people on track, if that makes sense. I was wondering if anyone could comment on that.
The verse that I can think of is the Sarva Dharma Parityajya, just to give up all these different speculations and duties and religious things like that. That's what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's the best I can do.
If I could just make one real quick comment. The mood, this is what I was thinking as you were talking, because it makes sense, but for devotees who've come to the point of chanting Hare Krishna mantra, which is a prayer directly to Krishna, please engage me in your service, why would we ever approach the demigods for anything? The only thing worth praying for is service, but you already got Krishna's ear, through this bona fide spiritual master. And that's why we have this verse from Bodhananda Saraswati, who's, a great devotee. He wrote the Chaitanya Chandramrita and other books. So he says, Kaivalyam narakayate, judashabura kasha pushpayate, durdandendriya kala sabaplari prokata dangstrayate. Vishwam Purna Sukayate, Vidi Mahendrisha Kitayate, It Karunyakatakshavaivutam Tam Gauramevasama. One who's received empowerment from the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya. which is what we're trying to go for. And even if we're just practicing in our neophyte stage, we have received some of that mercy, so for sure. Then all these things happen. That merging into the Brahman, is like going to hell. Who cares? All of these demigods, planets, wonderful, live here, Nanda, just like sky flowers. Who cares? It's not even real for me, right? That's the idea. And then the very difficult to control senses, which are like poisonous snakes. This is for the yogis. They have the fangs removed. The senses are still there, but you're using them for Krishna, so they can't hurt you. Rather, they can help you in your service. And then he says, ki tayate, vidi Mahendra, etc., Brahma and the great Indra, they're no more significant in terms of worship than insects. In other words, we offer them respect, but they're not going to waste time praying to them for what? We pray to Radha and Krishna for pure love for them, and pray to their servants, please, Nartam. So it's a question of perspective. Once you've come, now, if you're coming from an atheistic platform or a different culture, okay, worship the demigods. Don't just worship your boss or some political figure or yourself. At least worship the demigods, and then, because there'll be also some Vishnu mantras and things like that. But that Prabhupada came to America from that environment where everyone's worshiping the gods. You go to the Hindu temples, they got everybody on there, right? I've seen some temples. And it's exactly what the offense to the holy name is. You notice it's important. It says equal to or independent of. Those are two different things. It said to think that the demigods are equal to. It means, I can worship Brahma, I can worship Shiva, it doesn't matter. Independent of means, okay, I'm going to worship Vishnu, but I'm also going to worship Brahma, and I'm going to worship Shiva and Durga and Ganesh and all these to just cover all my bases. That's independent of. They'll give you something that Krishna can't give you. So both of those are offensive. So once you come to the point of chanting Hare Krishna mantra sincerely for the right reason, in the right consciousness, the demigods they're like bit players in Krishna's Leela, In other words, Brahma, of course, Brahma's our, Sampradaya Acharya, that's another thing. He gave, Brahma Samhita and important instructions, so we revere him. But we're not going to worship him for any material thing. If we want, we can worship him by singing his song, like that. But don't get diverted into the demigod thing. And then, now what's going on here in the fifth canto is that I think they're all coming to the point, of worshiping Vishnu and showing why he's supreme. But many of them, like the demigods, say, "Oh boy, I wish we could take birth on earth," and join in the Sankirtan movement. That's another thing. So it's. I think that's my take.
Thank you, Dravida. Did you have something to say?
Well, I was going to contribute something, but anyway.
Please use the microphone.
I guess I was just thinking that we can. It seems to me from those statements that we can worship the demigods in their capacity as gurus. And like Lord Brahma, he's he's the head of our parampara, so we worship him in that capacity. But I think Prabhupada's making the distinction between worship for some like material benefit or worship for some kind of like Sukriti or something like that, versus worshiping them as great personalities whose mercy we can get to progress in devotional service. And I think we were talking about it recently. Yeah, we were. That traditionally, like for example, like Rupa Goswami, he put Ganesh outside, his temple, and then traditionally, Shiva sat outside of Vishnu temples. So it seems to me like that's the idea, that we can like the demigods are worshipable personalities in as much as they're devotees, the ones who are. But for any other reason, it seems to me like that there's not really scope for that. That's what it seems like from the purport.
Okay, Vijay Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Govardhan Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams. My question is, how do you explain that the wind, the sun, the fire, death, and Indra, the king of heaven, all perform their respective duties out of fear of God, when it is well known that the process of Bhakti Yoga is all about becoming fearless, like, for example, Prahlad Maharaj.
Okay. Well, Dravida Prabhu should answer this because
it's the most logical one. You know, Indra, I think we can safely say, has a tendency to lose it, you know, to lose perspective and do things that you practically have, your jaw drops. This whole Govardhana Leela, you're going to annihilate the whole community. He obviously forgot everything about his own position, who Krishna is and everything. So then when he saw what happened, he approached Krishna. And I think we could say there that he was somewhat tremulous, you know, when he approached it. First of all, he did it in secret, right? And Surabhi cow came, she was just ecstatic, you know, and begged forgiveness and so forth, and he was forgiven, and he bathed, you know, Krishna in the Airavata water, you know, this whole abhisheks, and yeah, like that. So the idea of performing it out of fear means that they're conscious of their own position as a great responsibility, but they're also conscious that they're somewhat covered by the material energy. In other words, they're Sakama devotees. They have they want their position. That was Indra's whole thing. You know, oh, someone's going to take my position. Let me steal the horse. Oh, someone may take my. Let me send down an apsara to seduce this yogi. You know, like that. He likes that. So he's obviously compromised by some passion, right? That's why he's got eyes on his body. I won't tell the whole story. You know the whole story. So therefore, he's performing his duty out of his duty, not out of a sense of pure devotion, out of love. There may be some of that, but because he's got his position. It's the same reason why you go to, I better go to work, I got to get there in time. You're doing that out of fear of being fired and losing your job, right? So that in that sense, it's fear. They're not afraid that Krishna's going to kill them, but they're conscious of their position and that they need to stay in line to be responsible and do their duty and like that. That's the idea out of fear. It's not. But in contrast to the pure devotees who are doing everything out of love. That's the idea. That's what it means to be a Sakama devotee.
Thank you very much for that. Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you for all your contributions. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Kanai Balai ki jai.